Dear students, welcome to the second lecture of Introduction to Anthropology. We will be discussing culture today. In topic culture, we will be covering various aspects of culture and how it is adaptive and maladaptive at times. We'll be talking about the universality, generality, and particularity of cultures. What is culture then? There are many things in culture that we can see. It's visible, it's tangible, like language, dress, fine arts, literature, food, holidays. Things that we can't see is family role, beliefs, core values, relation to authority, family values, gender roles, rules that conducted, pride, competitiveness, thought pattern, gestures, expectations. How do we define culture then? Um, Tyler defined culture as the complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, moral, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by man as a member of the society. Now, this definition sounds perfect, but it is one of the definitions which is actually putting everything in culture, the traits in culture, but not actually saying what culture does to us. And it assumed that there's only one kind of culture, and the multiplicity is absent in definition. Now, for contemporary anthropology, culture is defined as actually it defines as plurals, cultures. Cultures have been characterized as set of control mechanisms, plans, recipes, rules, instructions, what computer engineers call programs for governing the behavior. This is defined by Geertz. What are the different aspects of culture? Culture is primarily is learned. That is something that you need to remember. Culture is inherited, something we learn through process called enculturation. Cultural learning depends on the uniquely developed human capacity to use symbols, signs that have no necessary or natural connection to the things they signify or for which they stand. Supposedly, seasons. For autumn, for us, autumn is something. For English, autumn is similar, but they have very different characteristics. We are not essentially saying the same thing in the same manner. The recipe, instruction, program, whatever we call the culture is internalized by individuals in a particular culture through enculturation. The system helps us to perceive, process things, events surrounding us, guiding our actions. Enculturation is then a process which is immediate, conscious, subconscious, and interactive. Culture is taught directly and also transmitted through observation. Supposedly, we are taught to respect elders, but there are certain things that we can't see, but we know that do we have to do that in a particular culture. Suppose like by respecting elders, that doesn't necessarily mean that we are always saying salam to them, but we do that anyways because we see most of our older people doing the same thing, so we actually copy them. Culture is symbolic as well. Our ancestors acquired the unique ability to use symbols, that is, to originate or create and bestow meaning on things or an event, and correspondingly to grasp and appreciate such meanings. There is no obvious natural or necessary connection between the symbol and what it symbolizes. Symbols are usually linguistic, but there are non-verbal symbols as well, such as flags that stand for countries. I mean, it's a piece of cloth, but it takes the meaning or shape when it comes in a form of flag. It is about the honor and representation of a particular country. These abilities are to learn, to think symbolically, to manipulate language, and to use tools and other cultural product, is organizing their lives and coping with their environment. So it actually helps us to cope with our environment. Culture is also shared because you cannot learn culture without sharing it. Culture is an attribute not of individual per se, but individuals as member of the group, which we defined at the beginning of this lecture. Culture is transmitted in society, so it is transmitted from one generation to another. Our belief, value, memories, and expectations, that part of culture which we assume as unique to individual experiences, are actually shared. We learn them growing up in the same culture. We are all tied to our culture through our common experiences. Suppose what we feel, the joy that we feel, the pain that we feel, how we process the emotions are very cultural. There's nothing unique about individual. It's a common shared understanding that a particular age group of people or particular gender group of people would go through. Every individual is an agent of enculturation, be it primary agents like family or secondary peer. We are most likely to agree with the feel and feel comfortable with people who are socially, economically, culturally similar to ourselves. So cultural sharing is easier when we are mixing up with a similar group of people. Culture is also nature. Culture takes the natural biological urges to share with other animals and teaches us how to express them in a particular way. People have to eat, but culture teaches what to eat, when to eat, and how to eat. Our culture and the cultural changes affect the ways in which we perceive nature, human nature, or what natural is, like food habit, timing of the food, the recipe, everything. Through science, invention, and discovery, cultural advances have overcome many natural limitations that we have. But also that can be adaptive or maladaptive, which we will be discussing in a few seconds. Culture is all-encompassing. Everyone is an agent of particular culture, as we said earlier, regardless of their class, gender, or age. Culture is not an exclusive property of an individual with the disposition of refined taste, sophistication, education, and appreciation of fine arts. Rather, it's of masses too. That means culture is not of upper classes people or with refined tastes, but it's about the working class as well. It is about the middle class as well. The most interesting and significant cultural forces are those that affect people every day of their lives, particularly those that influences children during enculturation. Culture, as defined anthropologically, encompasses features that are sometimes regarded as trivial or unworthy or of serious studies such as popular culture, but this everydayness contribute to the social transformations. We will see how our everyday practices changes or make the culture more dynamic. It's never static. So if you notice your life experiences and if you compare your life experiences with your parents or grandparents, there's a significant shift and transformation. We are still following the same rule, but the rule and the way we conduct our lives are very different from one another. The pace of our life and the experiences are very different from one another. Culture is also integrated. When it's encompassing, all encompassing, it means it also is integrated. So it is entwined. So if one thing changes, then other thing in culture changes too. So cultures are not haphazard collection of customs and belief. Cultures are integrated, patent system. If one part of the system, suppose economy changes, other part of that change as well. For example, women and their choices, whether they want to be a homemaker or want to work or want to do both, has shifted over the generations. For the reality of our grandparents and our realities are very different, and it so happened because of the material condition that has changed over the period of time. Cultural change can correspond to the change in economic, religious, and political transformation. So, as I said earlier, is that if one thing changes, it is bound to change other thing or impact other things as well. Culture is instrumental, adaptive, and maladaptive. Culture is the main reason for human adaptability and success. Humans also adapt biologically, like physical response to heat and cold. But people also have cultural ways of adapting. To cope with environmental stresses, we habitually use technology or tool. We hunt, we gather, we process food. These are all cultural ways of processing our biological needs. People use culture instrumentally, that is, to fulfill their biological needs for food, drink, shelter, comfort, and reproduction. But on a different level, such traits can also be maladaptive. For example, emissions from our machines have environmental effects and can harm human and other lives too, which we are witnessing uh, for, for almost half a century now. Lastly, culture has culture is really interesting because it's at the same time universal, it's general, and it can be particular. Universal means something that exists in every culture. Suppose us as a human being in our lives, we as a species, the way we live our life, that is universal. Like we all have to eat. We all Education has become almost a universal need as well. Generality is cultural pattern or trait that exists in some but not all the societies. And particularity is distinctive or unique cultural trait, pattern, or integration. We'll be discussing about this more in live sessions and in our next lecture as well. For now, I would end my lecture here. Thank you very much.